Hello and welcome to the third and final part of the analysis of iCAT12, which is part of our All India National Level CAT test series for CAT 18. As we saw in the first two parts, iCAT12 has been classified as an easy to moderate mock. We saw that the average difficulty level per question was around 1.7. As explained earlier, 1.7 means that each question would be less than moderate difficulty on an average. Here we assume that each question is given a difficulty level of 1 to 3 from easy to moderate. So how did the quant section compare with the overall mock difficulty as well as CAT's difficulty? Typically quant is the easiest section in the CAT. However, in this mock we saw that verbal was the easiest section with an average difficulty close to 1.4, 1.5, whereas quant, although it was easy by itself, was tougher than verbal with an average difficulty of 1.6 nearly. Now, why do we say it was easy nevertheless? Because in the actual exam, the difficulty of quant is somewhere between 1.6 to 1.65, which means that on the whole, the questions in quant are on the easier side. What do we mean when we say they are on the easier side? Of these 34 questions, anywhere between 15 to 17 questions can be classified as easy. Typically, there are somewhere between 3 to 5 or let's say, 3 to 5 questions which can be classified as tough and which need to be skipped. So the remaining questions, which is another, let's say 13 to 15 or 14 to 16 questions, can be classified as moderate questions. So if we observe half of the mock or nearly half of the mock can be called easy. This is something which becomes the clincher as far as clearing the sectional cutoff is concerned. These are the questions that need to be identified and skipped, whereas this is often the game changer based on your strengths and weaknesses in various chapters. Now, as you can see, this number is again nearly 40 to 50% of the mock itself or of the section itself. So, you need to have a strong base in a large number of chapters in order to diversify your risk. What does this mean in practical terms? What if most of the moderate questions are from geometry where you are weak? Then you might not end up attempting these questions and might miss the cutoff by a few marks. Whereas if you have some 8-10 chapters where you're reasonably good, then you can even try the moderate questions from those chapters and attempt to clear the cutoff. How do we now look at quant? In quant, typically students come and tell us that they are good or bad in certain areas like geometry, modern math, etc. Fortunately for us, quant can be broadly divided into 4 very, very well-defined parts: arithmetic, algebra, geometry, modern math. So when somebody says they are good or bad at something, my next question immediately is, are you uniformly good at arithmetic? Are you uniformly bad at geometry? If I give you 10 questions on arithmetic, will you be able to solve at least 8 or 9 of them? Will you be able to solve all questions on time distance? Then the answers start coming that maybe I did not think on these lines. So for any mock, you need to break up arithmetic further and see how many sitters it had, how many easy questions it had, what was the kind of breakup, so what should have been the strategy. And that also goes on to show you why having strengths in multiple chapters is very, very crucial. Let's have a look at this mock first. As we said, the average difficulty of this section was close to 1.6. Now, when I look at the average difficulty of questions from these 4 parts, a very clear trend emerges that arithmetic and geometry were more or less at par with the section. On the other hand, algebra was the simplest. So even if somebody says that he or she is bad at algebra, this was a mock where algebra would actually have given that person a lot of scoring opportunities. On the other hand, modern math was the toughest part within this mock. So if somebody were to rely on modern math a lot, this mock might actually prove counterproductive. That is where we recommend that if you have 1 or 2 strong areas, try and diversify so much that any combination of chapters will not really affect your performance. Let's now go into further detail into the quant section. If I look at arithmetic first, we said that it was more or less at par with the section. Now I can see that there were 9 questions here. Out of these 9, clearly there were 4 sitters or 4 easy questions. 1 sitter, very easy to solve, and 3 fairly easy questions, a little bit of application. On the other hand, there were 5 moderate questions. So here very clearly the strategy would have been to identify the right questions to attempt and then maximize those attempts. So here question selection would be extremely important in trying to tackle arithmetic. Of course, when we talk of moderate, a lot of students find the moderate of arithmetic much easier than say the moderate of geometry. So even here, out of 5, a lot of students might have been able to attempt even 3 questions. On the other hand, when I look at geometry, which has the same average difficulty, again 5 moderate questions. But here, if somebody did 4 or 3, here somebody might have been able to do only 3 or 2. Because typically geometry tends to be slightly tougher. Again, 4 questions with easy questions with 2 easy 2 sitters. So technically this looks to be simpler than arithmetic, but in our system, because we allocate an LOD of 1 to whether a question is easy or sitter, this average LOD turns out to be the same. So again here, question selection would be extremely important. On the whole, if you look at all areas of this mock, you will see that all sections are broadly balanced out. Same logic, if I look at algebra, even though it's the simplest, there are 6 questions out of 10 which are either sitters, with 4 sitters being here and 2 easy questions. So definitely something that should have been tried, and then 4 moderate questions. So here the combination in all is maximize your attempts for the easy and sitter questions, select the right question to attempt from the moderate ones. Whereas in modern math the ratio changes completely. There is no sitter whatsoever, just one easy question. So here the key becomes to search for this question. Of course, when you start the mock, you wouldn't know that there is one easy question. So if you are not very good at modern maths, what is going to happen in this particular mock is that you are actually going to leave all the modern math questions, because 4 out of 6 were moderate, which in an area like modern math actually tends to become slightly tougher. And then there was one question which was genuinely tough. This was in fact the only tough question in this mock. So if I look at this particular section of the mock, I would say that this was very clearly a case of selecting the right questions from the moderate ones while trying to attempt as many questions as possible from the easy and sitter questions. Like we can see here, there were 7 sitters and 8 easy questions. So 15 questions in all, which could be called easy. As a student, I would easily try and attempt 13 to 14 of these. There were 18 moderate questions, which was slightly more than what we just explained above, and that made this section slightly easier compared to the benchmark number for CAT. Even assuming a 60% turnaround or a 2/3 attempt ratio, if you are well prepared by this stage, you should have been able to attempt somewhere around 12 questions here, and the single tough question could have just been skipped. So if I compare these 3 numbers, it was realistically possible to attempt anywhere between 25 to 26 questions as far as this mock was concerned. Of course, here we are assuming that you as a student are fairly conversant with your concepts and can identify the simple and easy questions to be done. If you cannot, then this attempt will go down really dramatically to around 20. So which were the easy questions? As you can see, our experts here have made this small table which lists down the questions that they have classified as easy. Please note that this is not an absolute table, or this is not something where something called a sitter is always a sitter. What do I mean by this? Let's say I call question 73 a sitter. Some other faculty might say it is easy but not a sitter, which might be valid. A lot of students might find it to be a sitter, some might find it easy. Somebody who's not good at logs might find it tough. So this is not a comprehensive list by itself. This is to give you an idea where after the mock you analyze your mock and see your own list of sitters, make your own list every time, compare it with this, and then go to your faculty or come to us and ask us why did this question be called a sitter. I tried 82 and I found it to be very easy. Why have you not called it a sitter? Or is there something wrong that I am doing? So there's a lot of self-evaluation involved here. Please try and make a similar table for sitters and tough questions as per your analysis for each mock. Let's move on to the third graph here, which we showed for all sections earlier. So here, this lists the questions of this section by LOD. The blue bars indicate the MCQs, the orange or pink bars indicate the theta or any questions. Now, why is this graph important? In a lot of CAT mocks, you will see that there are certain stretches where you have easy questions put back to back. In this particular mock, unfortunately, there are no huge stretches that way, but still you can see that there are these parts where you have, especially in the second half, if I see after question 84 here, if I were to draw an imaginary line, after question 84, the next 16 questions have at least 9 easy questions. So more than half of the remaining part here is actually easy. Plus the others are also moderate. So there's just one tough question. Whereas if I look at the first half of this mock, there is this chunk here which comprises 6 moderate questions back to back. Similarly, a chunk here of 3 and another chunk here of 3. Now what does this mean? How do we interpret this in practical terms? If I were to go in purely sequential order from here, I would encounter a lot of moderate questions up front while missing out a lot of easy questions here. So I might end up losing a lot of time here, and because of that, it is very likely that I completely miss this chunk here. So in the mock, please do not go only sequentially. I would suggest that you have a quick look at all the questions, try and identify the ones or make a note of the ones that you think are doable. You have a scratch pad, so please jot that down. Write down the numbers of questions that you think you should be solving and then devote the first half of your section to solving those questions. On the whole, as we said, 25 attempts could be possible. Let's have a look at a couple of questions now. Sorry. So, for instance, let's look at 73. If log x raised to a, log x raised to b, log x raised to c are in a GP with a common ratio 2, what is the value of a plus b plus c? Now this might look complicated, 1 because a lot of students are afraid of logs, and 2 because it involves a GP as well. But there are already a lot of data given to you, plus this, in spite of looking difficult, is a fairly simple question. So I have a log x, which can just be written as log x, that's my first term. Then I have a log x raised to a, so I know that this is nothing but a log x. Now, very clearly it can be observed that if this is the first term and this is the second term, the only thing that is being multiplied here is nothing but the common ratio. So you need to know two aspects. One, this property of log, that log x raised to a is a log x, and two, property of GP, that the factor being multiplied between term 1 and term 2 is my common ratio. I know that my common ratio is 2, so the value of a is equal to 2. My second term is nothing but b log x, that's my third term, sorry. So the third term, because I know the common ratio is 2, it will be 2 times of this or 4 times of this, so b will be equal to 4. Similarly, this last term will be equal to c log x, which will be twice of this, twice of this, twice of this. So 8 times this, which means c will be equal to 8. Now I can simply add this and get my answer as 14. So that is something which can be done very easily if you just apply these two small concepts. Again, look at question 75. Very clearly a property that you need to know. Slope of a line perpendicular to the line passing through 2 points. So here a lot of students will make the mistake of first finding the equation of the line passing through these points, then trying to find the other equation and then going to the slope. You don't need to find the equation of the line. Just bypass that and look at the slopes. When you have two perpendicular lines, you just need to multiply their slopes and get m1, m2 equal to -1. Here the slope is very clearly 0 minus 3 upon 2 minus -2, which is -3 by 4. So I need to find the number which when multiplied will give me that. So it will be 4 by 3, which is this. So these are some questions which can actually be done in less than a minute. But you need to remember these small properties. And that is where a lot of students miss out on clearing the cutoffs because they do not remember these small properties. Now again, consider 87, which is the largest 5-digit number divisible by all of 16, 24, 33, 23. Take the LCM of these because I am looking at the largest number, and then in an earlier scenario where we did not have a calculator, you would have had to actually multiply and check. Here it's very simple. I know that the smallest 6-digit number is 1 lakh. So I divide 1 lakh by this LCM and then I look at the multiple of so and so number, which is just less than 1 lakh. And I get my answer. So use the calculator for your benefit. So broadly, if we look at all this, we can say that this was a fairly simple mock with a lot of easy questions. Some questions which could be solved by tricks or by using options. Some questions where you needed specific knowledge in order to solve that question. But on the whole, there were a large number of easy and sitter questions which could have been attempted. More questions which were moderate than required, but again it had a good spread of chapters. So based on your strengths, you could have been selective and still ended up with close to 25 attempts. So if we were to look at all three sections, we would say that this mock had a very easy verbal giving close to 22 attempts, a moderate to tough DLR with 16 good attempts, and an easy quant with somewhere around 25 good attempts. So if we were to take all three numbers, you have 22, 16 and 25. So anywhere above 60 attempts or anywhere close to 65 attempts would be a good performance as far as this mock is concerned. The video analysis for all our mocks so far is available on our official YouTube channel given in the link. You can subscribe to our channel by clicking on this link. Hitting the bell button will enable you to receive notifications every time a new video is put up. You can also put in your comments, feedback or questions on the thread below the video. Keep watching. Thank you and wish you all the very best.